Hello, everybody. Welcome to the ELF Monday morning recap show. We've just completed the second week of the 2024 ELF season. I am here with two of the premier ELF commentators and experts, Jamal Clay and Matt Bressington. Welcome to the show, fellas. How you doing?
What's up? Welcome to the show, Matt.
I appreciate it. I've been waiting. I'm here. Obviously a long road, but we finally made it.
We finally got Matt on the show. And for anyone who hasn't seen Matt's breakdowns on YouTube, he does a lot of great stuff on his YouTube channel, Matt Bressington. We're lucky to have him here today. Jamal, yourself as well, Athletes Forum, but you've been here with me before. We had a great show a couple weeks ago. Just real quick, guys, before we get into all the games, what are your kind of general thoughts of week 2 of European League of Football?
Man, I'll let you start us off, man.
Well, it's rivalry week, right? And we had so many different games. Serge and Roadclaw, that's a great game. We got the El Classico first in history, the Austrian Derby. We got the Cologne and Enthroners, the two lower teams that ended up having that kind of back and forth. The Fire and Galaxy is always it's just a big week. And then even Hamburg and Pat. Every game could be considered a rivalry, where divisional or more out of divisional meaningful, like with the Austrian and with the Spanish games.
Exactly.
Incredible. I loved it. They cooked with the schedule.
Even what you said of maybe it's not a traditional rivalry, but for example, Serge and the Panthers, that's kind of a budding rivalry, especially with what happened last year with the Serge knocking them out of the playoffs and seeing how some of the players on the Panthers are feeling about that. Jamal, what are your thoughts just generally?
Yeah. Week 2, it was personal week 2. Got a lot of teams that familiar with each other. A lot of teams looking to get their first win in the rivalry, a new rivalry, obviously in the ELF, El Classico. And I also think I think I learned a little bit about the Raiders and Frankfurt in their losses that could possibly be a positive that we'll dive into a little bit throughout the show.
That I am very, very curious to hear about, because I've definitely got some thoughts of my own. And I'd be very curious to hear about what you're thinking there. Guys in the chat, welcome. Feel free to chime in at any point. Give your thoughts on the games as well. So let's go dive on into it. Let's head into our first game of the weekend. You guys know one that's near and dear to my heart, Stuttgart Serge versus the Wrocław Panthers out in Poland. Now, let's start off with you, Matt. Give us your thoughts on this matchup out here in Poland this weekend.
All right. Now, I've got a lot to talk about this game because I want to talk about a game. Momentum, I won't keep you for too long, but the momentum swings back and forth. The fumble to open up the game. Panthers play calling is outstanding. The bender with the jet sweeps. Looks like the Roadclaw going to take it. Serge come back on every single offensive play. It looks like they're getting better and better and better. Yannick Meyer, fantastic. One of the best European receivers in the entire league. Hennessy, phenomenal. They had 637 yards of total offense. That's incredible. The fourth quarter was one of the most stress-inducing quarters I've ever watched in football. Interceptions, fumbles. Bender gets a fumble to tie it up. Wentzer with the pick before for the Serge. They missed field goals. Everything was going on. This game was incredible. Dusan played well. AJ put the defense in his back. Bennett was fantastic. Mazin was fantastic. Lewis Guy there's so many players I want to talk about. Overall, one of the best games in ELF history. I'm going to put that out there.
Ooh, I like that, man. And it was a stress-inducing game. Right here in the chat, Marcus says, scary start for the Surge. I lost a few more hairs in the first quarter. I think that we could see a little bit of that 12, 13-hour bus ride of the Surge trying to shake that off at the beginning of that game. Jamal, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, similar to what Matt said, I think Wrocław did a good job, at least in the beginning of the game, by keeping the Serge defense a little bit, off balance and kind of like how they were calling the game. And I think it was a great game plan. The only thing that, kind of worried me, and we kind of saw, in the second half, was that, 2 of the Panther scores came off, double reverse pass and a double reverse for a touchdown with Bender. Now, that's great and all with trick plays, but then, you got to figure out how to score just off your base offense. Serge kind of figured, what they were trying to do. Panthers weren't able to do much in the second half. And you saw when the Serge defense, we talked about it week one, we saw when that defense woke up in the second half. Again, they were fast, they were aggressive, they were attacking. And, shout out to Mitch Fettig with another interception. That was a great play. And it seems like we're almost averaging 1 to 2 Yannick Mayer hurdles every game. And as he scored on one, he hurdled another dude. So I think it was a great performance by the Serge. I think even the Panthers, I think they played well. I just don't think they finished the game better than they should have.
Yeah, like Steigerwald.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Panthers came out and they were obviously super hyped for this game, and they kind of jumped on the Surge early. But this is sort of a little bit of a testament to those Jordan Newman teams. I know I was watching the game with a couple people who were kind of so worried that they were Surge fans. And they were worried, oh man, this is not looking good for the Surge. I said, hey, the team's going to be calm. They're going to go in the halftime. They're going to make their adjustments. They're going to be just fine. And of course, they did. A couple really impressive individual performances that you guys touched on. Yannick Meyer with the touchdown, with that highlight reel hurdle that should probably be on SportsCenter. He went for 199 yards. And then Riley Hennessy went off 23 for 34, 473 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and he got it done on the ground as well. I think he had, what did he have?
Yeah, the rushing touchdown too.
Yeah, 54 rushing yards as well. His running ability, and I commented this somewhere, is criminally underrated.
Yeah.
Riley Vick.
I like it. But like Paul Steigerwald as well. Like he came in, Daryl Stewart's out. So this was a Surge team without an A.
Yes.
Got, like some people forgot about that, which I did too. And someone like Paul Steigerwald stepped in, got the game like clinching touchdown with that amazing grab in the corner.
Right.
And was phenomenal all game. It's like one of the rotationary players. I think the Surge could honestly have like an argument for having the best receiver core in the entire league. Like when the backup players are pulling out plays like that, that's crazy.
100%, man. It's crazy that we didn't even mention that the Daryl Stewart Jr. is out right now, banged up. They play with a full slate of European wide receivers, and still there was 2 guys. Yeah, Lewis Geyer also went for over 120 yards on that game. So just really got it done. But I mean, we're talking a lot about the Surge. We got to give our props to the Panthers as well. This is one of the tougher teams in the league. And here we see a great touchdown from them right on there on the highlights. But, they showed out a little bit, and I'm curious to see what they take from this and where they go from here.
I think they're contenders still. Like they may have lost this one, but they looked great against Berlin. They know how to score. I don't think anyone can doubt they know how to score.
Yeah.
They just need to... They looked really good defensive at the start, and then they wore down as the game ended. Surge was starting to impose themselves a little bit more. They had the fumble at the start, and they didn't get a turnover for a while. Surge started creating turnovers. Of course, saw with that big hit that caused a fumble on Bender. But they just need AJ is excellent.
AJ's unreal.
He's the defensive player of the year this season. That's what it seems like. He's everywhere.
Right.
Like absolutely, yeah. That's Paul Steigerwald's touchdown. Like it was such a good game. I think that might even be one of the games of the season. We'll look back in retrospective and just kind of just reminisce, how good it was.
That's 2 weeks in a row for the Panthers with great playing and great games.
That's so true. Hey, the Panthers are one of the best shows in the ELF right now. I mean, they're putting on performances, and of course, they unfortunately for them lost this one, but they came out on top in week 1, and they showed that they can score, they can play entertaining football. Here we see the final score, 44-34, and that was a great one to kick off this slate of the weekend, week 2. Then we head to Spain for the highly anticipated El Clasico with the ELF debut and actually franchise debut of the Madrid Bravos. This time we'll start with you, Jamal. What are your thoughts on our first ever ELF El Clasico?
Yeah, I think we were all excited to kind of see what this Madrid team was about. First of all, it's a beautiful stadium. I can't wait to see, as they continue growing the league, how they could pack that out. But yeah, this one, personal for a lot of reasons, even before ELF got into it. But I think one thing watching this game is Madrid they look polished. They look great. They had a great game plan. One thing that stuck out is they were way more physical than Barcelona. There was one play, literally an offensive lineman was blocking a D lineman 20 yards down the field. And that's just the epitome of like the mentality that they had, throughout the game. They just wanted it more. I think the thing with Barcelona is that how they use Levi is like they move the pocket a lot, which is fine and all. but then you're limiting most of the field and obviously your options. And I think, what Madrid tried to do is keep him in the pocket, and every time he set up, collapse, which obviously they got a couple tackles made like that, but they wanted him more. And then, Barcelona, no disrespect, but respectfully, Barcelona's run game is not respected right now. You can't, for a team that wants to do play action, you don't got that respect in the run game where teams are going to stack the box, and that's going to lighten up the backload. So, Madrid had a good game plan. Chris Helbig looked good. I'm not even going to lie. He looked good. I was hesitant on him last year, especially with start with Berlin, but he looked good in his first game back.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's a great point about, Barcelona trying to be a play action team, but having not really established a respectable run game. It's like, I'm a former linebacker. If they haven't established the run game, it's not gonna be effective at all. It's not gonna help at all. Matt, what are your thoughts?
I mean, but I'm not entirely sure if this is correct, but as the only European that's ever co-hosted ELF Live, this El Clasico, born in Europe, I'm not so sure, but this El Clasico meant a lot to me. I was really looking forward to it after watching up Barcelona and Real Madrid, those kind of rivalries. This one wasn't close. Like, Barcelona's offensive line, you can be respectful as you want. 4 touchdowns, 343 yards in a day. Levi Lewis, we know that he's a talented quarterback, right? But he's got no time, like not a second to even calculate or read the defense. It's just pressure. And it's hard for him to do anything. He's thrown 40 times a game. He's not able to get like extended drives. He's not able to get players downfield. He has people that like speedy. He has speedy receivers. Donatelli, we said in week 1 when he was playing the Mercenaries and they had a worse defensive line now playing, he has great hands and he can affect the field all over. You cannot get longer developing and intermediate routes when you don't have any time to throw the ball. So he's just scrambling for his life, run around with like his hair on fire. Can't really get much going on. The defense couldn't deal with the speed, the physicality of Madrid, as you mentioned. Dwayne Obi is just such a 3-down back. It's hard to really wear him down. They limited him, but you can only really limit him for so much while also limiting the other receivers. Like Mario Flores, it's a friend of mine, 2 touchdowns. He looked good on his return. Former Dragon. There's so many former Dragons on this Madrid team. It felt a lot more personal. You know what I mean?
That's a great point. There are so many former Dragons on there. And when you talk to some of the guys who ended up leaving Barcelona and going to Madrid, it is personal. It's pretty damn personal. And even some of the Americans, for example, Luke Glenna left Barcelona to go to Madrid. And I know a little inside info. He's kind of pissed off about how things went down.
Yeah.
Luke Glenna himself, a very underrated player, I feel like right now, not getting too much buzz. He's a fantastic sideline to sideline safety. Here we see Chris Helbig getting a little bit of action done with his feet. Another interesting point was, Madrid came out and they were very effective on third down, 7 for 10 on third down, as opposed to Barcelona's 4 for 13. And that's pretty impressive to have that kind of third down composure for a first ever game. This is the first ever time that this team is playing like this together. I mean, what do you think, guys? How legit is Madrid? Obviously, Barcelona's not at the top of the league. So this win, although impressive right now on paper, what does it mean for their position in the Western Conference?
Well, I think this win was obviously important for them. Obviously, the rivalry, but also what it meant for the players. But we'll have a better understanding of who Madrid is next week when they go up against, obviously, I believe it's the Rhine Fire. But looking at this game, one of the questions I have is the talent really that? Is the talent really that much different in Madrid than it is Barcelona? Because it looked night and day. If I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
What do you think, Matt? I mean, I know you're an expert on these rosters and on the talent. Is it really that big of a talent differential with Madrid versus Barcelona?
Yeah. Like Pablo Arrea is a player that I've been a fan of for years. You read some of my stuff from 2019. I'm talking about Pablo Arrea, one of the best nickel players potentially in the league. He's Spanish. And he came in, he's got American experience. I think it was at Gold Coast. Yeah. Comes in as a player that not many people really know about, and he gets 11 tackles in his ELF debut as a nickel. I think that he could be like Darren was last year with the Frankfurt team.
Yeah.
He's incredible. And they had a lot of people that left, and they replaced him with offensive linemen, and they didn't skip a beat. I was a little bit worried about that. They lost, was it Kev Fortes? They brought in Los Burgess.
Right.
Doesn't matter. They're still moving the ball effectively.
Yeah, there we go. And here we see the final score, 42-12, Madrid. It was all Madrid in the first ever El Clasico. And Matt, what you said, it's a cool thing to have this game in the European League of Football and to have such a kind of an iconic matchup. And there we go. We see that. All right, now we're moving to another iconic European matchup, the Austrian Derby, the Raiders Tirol versus the Vienna Vikings. This is an interesting matchup. They've been playing each other for years. Matt, we'll start off with you this time. Give us your thoughts on this Austrian Derby.
I'm not gonna lie. One of the lower quality Austrian derbies we've had. I'm gonna be honest. Like third down efficiency was poor for both teams. 1 for 12 from the Raiders, 3 for 13 from the Vikings. It just kind of felt like no one was really moving the ball. It was scoreless for a while. Kicks were poor. Like kicking's been a bit of a thing we talked about before. Like it's not been great. And then drops from the Raiders. It was a problem last week. It's been a problem this year. Chafin looks like he could be a phenomenal receiver if he's catching all the balls. He'll catch that amazing full stretch out play. And then a play later, he drops like a simple pass. They'd clearly miss a more reliable run game. Fulford is the offensive line's not good. It's another offensive line that struggled. They lost Lettman. They lost Steven Nielsen, who were two guys that played in the CFL. Steven Nielsen is excellent offensive tackle. He's gone. The offensive line is lackluster, to say the least. Boer's phenomenal. We know that Jordan Boer's excellent. Nudge Royora looked good. Reese Horn coming back in, which we're all excited to see him. He did well. He didn't light the world on fire, 42 yards, but he's working into it. Beer Obama, I'm kind of looking for him to get more involved. He's got a few of these intermediate routes, but he's not excelled so far in the offense. I think that's more down to the offense rather than him because he's an IPP guy. We know that he's a great athlete. It was just kind of a slow one. You know what I mean? Like it took a while to develop, and then when it did develop, the Vikings kind of ran away with it. For me, it wasn't a phenomenal game.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you on a lot of those points. I think the score was 6-12 up until like 7 minutes left. It was a little bit of a weird one, and so you kind of thought that it was close there. But I'm looking here at the time of possession. Vienna absolutely obliterated them on time of possession. 41 minutes 44 seconds to 18 minutes and 16 seconds for the Raiders. So that's kind of a little hidden stat there. Jamal, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, Matt definitely said a lot, but I think we all can agree that when you compare the rosters, Vikings roster compared to the Raiders, Vikings obviously have more talent at all levels. Obviously, the line, linebackers and defensive backs. Or if you're talking defense, but like you said, it was still a close game, 6-12. I think the main thing for the Raiders is they couldn't finish drives. They couldn't score, and then when they tried to get three, they missed a couple of field goals. So I think this game, granted the score, it was what it was. I think the Raiders proved that they're probably a little bit closer than what we thought they were, or the Vikings may not be as dominant as a lot of people we think they are. I think what the Vikings did that was good this game was they started attacking the middle of the field. Jordan Boer is obviously phenomenal, but Florian Beerbaum is almost unguardable.
Yeah.
Like the back shoulder phase, the middle of the field option routes. Like this guy is the best tight end in the league, and and obviously he's proved it over the course of the years. But I think the Raiders still could have made it interesting, especially in that first half. They just really didn't finish drives. Look at this guy right here.
Yeah, he's an absolute matchup.
So nonchalant about it as well.
I mean,
this guy scores doesn't even celebrate. You can't guard a guy like that.
He's an ice cold killer. That's what he is.
Business as usual. Doesn't even care.
No.
Guys, what?
Yeah.
What?
Lastly, sorry, they were attacking Gatchik, number 19. They were clearly going after him all game. Obviously, it's going to be an adjustment they fixed last time, but I think Raiders are a little bit closer than what they showed.
Great point.
Actually came from Berlin, right? I'm going to be honest. I was a little surprised for him to be an E player.
Yeah, it's interesting to see who some teams go with given those limited E spots, guys. What do the Raiders have to do? I mean, obviously, this is a long time iconic European football matchup rivalry here, and the Raiders have yet to beat the Vikings in the ELF era. What the hell do the Raiders have to do? And are they moving in the right direction? Do you guys think? Matt, I'll start with you.
I mean, I said before the season started, I thought the Raiders were going to fall off, and
Yeah.
I got a lot of people saying, "You're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about." I'm calling receipts in now. They're keeping on going down. They don't have the Austrian talent in the offensive lines. That's clear. They lost a lot of players last season. We'd all talked about Hamburg, how much they lost. Raiders lost just as much. Nitzlander, one of the best European corners, gone. Like
Nicholas Gustav not playing either.
Yeah, and they're just not spreading the ball out. Like we saw Philip Hahn last season was excellent, 4 yards. Marco Schneider, one of the better homegrown players at the slot, nothing. Then Wolford got under 100 yards passing. I just think they just needed to attract more of these offensive line prospects. There are a lot of offensive line prospects, not only in Austria, but coming up through the States. There are over 70 offensive linemen that are currently playing in Division 1 or Division 2 or Division 3. That's a lot of players you can try to attract, especially Germans. Be easier to get them in. Start recruiting in the offensive line. Some of the signings are being questionable in that position.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. There is Austrian talent on the offensive line. Here in the chat, Lucas Rokenschaub says the Raiders' O-line was moving, though. They opened up some big gaps early and got quite a big push on the D-line. Do you guys agree with that?
I mean, they did a bit, but then started getting tackles for loss. Swankor, who I said it could be a Rookie of the Year candidate. He came in and got a couple tackles for losses. They're just bigger on the they move around. People like Noah Kleinberg kind of moves around, so it's not as stable. He is a good player. He's been an improvement, but it's just not stable enough.
We need more Benatti. They need to run the ball more.
Yeah, they do. 100%. So there we see it. The final score, 27-6. It was a little bit closer for a while there until the last couple minutes of the fourth quarter. But Vienna Vikings once again topping the Innsbruck Raiders, or Raiders T-Roll, in that Austrian matchup. Now we are headed to Italy for a matchup of two teams that both lost their season openers. And I think we were talking about probably two of the more disappointing performances for week one, Munich Ravens and the Milano Seamen. Jamal, we start with you this time. What are your thoughts on this kind of, Alex Malchow said, this get-right game for these two teams?
Good way
to start. I think we all expected this from Munich. Got a little interesting in that first quarter when it was 7-7 for us.
True.
Definitely a bounce back game. I think we all expected it. But I want to talk a little about Milan. Obviously, it's been announced today they just parted ways with their offensive coordinator, Coach Malik Haskins. I think Milan has to figure out what their identity is. I think because that's 2 weeks in a row they've played teams that have gotten multiple score leads against them, and now they're playing from behind, and now they're playing the other team's game instead of controlling the game. Obviously, you got Patrick Carr for a reason. You need to control the game offensively, and also gives the defense a break as well on in that aspect too. Just pure matchup wise, Munich is not a good matchup for Milan. Where Milan is weak at, obviously, not having the number one receiver, not overall good on the offensive line is, Munich's strong points. And then, they have receivers offensively, Munich, that, can score from, inside, outside slot. And we all know last year that was the biggest struggle with Milan. A little better this year, but still, obviously, it still is a weakness on their defense. I would like to see Milan kind of take a Russell approach last season with getting, my cousin Juan Flores Calderon the ball more. Go double tight. Go stack bunch with the receivers. Don't have him line up outside and try to have him be your number one receiver because he's not that. You got to find ways to get him the ball more. And obviously you lost Tommy Wilson, so that hurts because that's a potential another playmaker. But they got to be, without having a true number one receiver and not like a go-to throw on the outside, you got to find ways to get creative. I think Zach, personally, obviously he has his lulls, but I think he's still a capable quarterback and can compete and help this team win. I think overall, the coaches got to figure out what they want to do offensively and form that identity and make teams play their style of ball.
Yeah, it's a great point. And obviously all of their struggles on offense, we saw they parted ways with their offensive coordinator today. And a new one is being announced, I think, right about now. Matt, what are your thoughts here on this matchup?
Oh, man. I mean, I was watching the offense and I was like, are you going to help or call the police or what? Like, this was unbelievable. Like, I'm trying to do the PG way to say it, but damn, they just weren't good. Like, I bought into the Broncos hype a little bit through Jamal. We're like, yeah, you might be quite now. I don't think that he can necessarily win a championship in this league. The American running backs don't work in the ELF, especially when the offensive line ain't good. I'm sure Carr is a great player.
No, you can't say they don't work in the ELF. You gotta have an offensive line. Yeah. But if you don't have an offensive line, there's no need to go get yourself an A running back, because then now you're going 10 personnel or you're going empty, and he's not even on the field.
Right. I mean, I think the point is maybe they can work. We've seen it in the past, like in the earlier years, they can work, but is it worth it? And obviously in this situation with a down offensive line, even with a talented player like Patrick Carr, it's probably definitely not worth it and doesn't work, probably.
They even moved, and I don't mean to cut you off, man. They even moved Machado from guard to center this week, and obviously it was a little better, but they're just not getting any push.
Yeah. No, they're not. You're right. Like, and I was quite critical of Munich last week for not having like a defined number 2 receiver. They look to have improved that this year. I'm not completely sold if they have like that number 2 guy. You know what I mean? But they look better. Myron Rouge got more of the ball. Regler got more of the ball. We saw Nowak had a key catch over the middle. Right. John Cole looks improved. It's very clearly a different offense to what we saw last season. For better or for worse, you can decide that for yourself. But the running game as well, they're without Tommy Ward. Tommy Ward wasn't in this game.
Very true.
Another big point. And Rodney stepped up, played well. Chad Jeffries got 2 touchdowns on the ground to go along with his 4 touchdowns in the air. But, like, Milan, 7 points, 2 games. That's like 6 hours. And they've scored 7 points.
That's 6 hours and 8 quarters.
Point an hour nearly. Like that.
Damn, I can fly from the East Coast to Europe in 6 hours.
Hey, Seamen, that's 1 touchdown.
Tough. Those are tough numbers right here. You touched on a little bit there, Matt, with Chad Jeffries. He's actually nominated or was nominated for MVP this week with his 21 completions on 33 attempts, 181 yards, 4 touchdowns to the air, 2 on the ground. So a nice little comeback game here for Chad Jeffries and the Munich Ravens. All right, we talked a lot about Milano and what their struggles and everything, but I think what's maybe even more interesting is what does this mean for the Munich Ravens? We saw their kind of disappointing game in week 1 against the Serge. In this tune-up game, they looked a lot better. Are the Munich Ravens that tier 1 team that a lot of people were talking about them as being in the preseason?
I'm going to say no. I have my tier 1 is very restricted to 3 teams we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
They're 2-2. I think that they're just a little bit below that. I think they can compete. I think they can maybe notch a win with one of the big boys. But they had what the easiest strength of schedule in the entire league, right? They're going to pick up these wins. Obviously, they're going to pick up these wins. They got the easiest strength of schedule. I don't think they're going to be competing. Maybe they could, but I'm not convinced.
Right. That's central. Oh, go ahead, Jamal.
It's hard because then you look at the East, there's going to be at least 2, like at most 3 teams all competing for 2 spots in the playoffs. And then obviously you look at the West, which is brutal. You could say the same there. So it's like, where does Munich kind of fit into that equation?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, the West, I mean, we saw it even, the Bravos coming out here and they're a team, they're something. And Cologne also in the West, they're not nothing. Cologne is something as well. So the West is really, in my opinion, at least kind of solidifying itself there as the number 1 conference. Now, guys, we have got a matchup out in the East, the Prague Lions and the Berlin Thunder, 2 teams that also lost their opening games this season, and they had a nice little matchup out there with the Berlin Thunder kind of tuning things up a little bit. Who did we start with last time? Was it you, Jamal?
It was me.
All right, Matt, give us your expertise on Jacob Sullivan's Berlin Thunder against the Prague Lions here.
I mean, it was Jacob Sullivan's Berlin Thunder, but I'm going to say it was Aaron Jackson's Berlin Thunder. That man is unreal. 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. And bias, I've said, like last week, how much his stock rose up. he looks like he could be a legit secondary receiver. I mean, we saw the pick of that one, which was a great play, but then a couple plays later, Prague then threw a pick. So, like, it didn't really even matter. Daniel Wright was out for this game, I've been a big fan of. There was a lot to take in, and I was quite hot on Prague in the preseason. I do still believe they have like potential. Radim Kalius, he's an excellent receiver, and he's one of the better Europeans we have, 126 and 2 for the Czech receiver. Lyles struggled under 50%, but the offensive line, not good at all. Like, I'm a massive Lawrence Cornwall-Baptiste. He's great. You look at every play, Lawrence Cornwall-Baptiste is locking up. The other 4 guys around him are not locking up. Lyles had seconds, not even a second, to throw the ball. Same issue we've had with a couple other teams we talked about today, just poor offensive line play. And it ultimately came to that. Merrill 0 couldn't really get going on the run game. Adam Zuleka was able to kind of get some of the motors turning, but Aaron Jackson completely stole the show. Like, he was absolutely phenomenal. The defense for Berlin, we know what it is. It's been the same for years. Kyle Kitchens is Kyle Kitchens. Like, if you don't know who Kyle Kitchens is, then just watch that game and that was enough. Like, he's so quick off the line. He was absolutely everywhere. Ludwig Myron was phenomenal. I think Kyle Kitchens got 4 tackles for loss.
Yeah,
Ross
I think
McClain, Gross McClain got 3. Like, and then the pick 6 from Alex Spillum, me and you, Jamal, and you, Nick, as well. We talked about Alex Spillum, how underrated he was.
So underrated, man.
He goes to get a pick 6 and he lays the boom on Merrill 0. And
he also had a really incredible punt return as well. He's a guy that doesn't get talked about nearly enough.
No, he got 5 picks last year, and people don't talk to him. Like, he went to Coastal Carolina. He was a legit.
Yeah, you know what's it's interesting, man. I played with him. He actually played with us on the Schwäbisch Unicorns 2022. And even then, he was still like kind of flew under the radar. And then we would see kind of flashes of this incredible ability. But he's a guy that, just kind of flies under the radar a little bit. And I like to see him getting a little bit more notoriety. When you have a flashy play like a pick 6 like this, you're going to get talked about a little bit more. Here we see a couple of interceptions. Jacob had a couple kind of, I don't know if I'd call them ugly interceptions. At least one out into the flat was kind of, bro, what is this? He's a little bit
unrefined.
What's that?
Unrefined.
Unrefined is a nice word. But he did end up with 3 touchdown passes and a solid stat line, 417 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jamal, what are your thoughts on this one out east?
Yeah, it's crazy just watching the show last Thursday. It's easy to say now, obviously, but I was going to say, for a hot take, Kyle Kitchens has 4+ sacks, and little do you know, like, I don't even know if that's a hot take. That might be, that might be cool at this point.
Yeah, that's a cold take, bro.
Bro, yeah, and their D-line came in a little banged up, but I personally said it as well, like how they guarded Prague, how they guarded Hamburg last week. If you do that this week versus Aaron Jackson, it's not going to work. And Aaron Jackson is just a little bit different. He's a little bit more of a polished, receiver with some speed and with some return capabilities, and he proved that. I like to see that. The one thing I guess I could take away from Prague is that, like, it's good to see, like, some of the guys on the team who were there last year, like, look better and make plays this year. Obviously, that's you're searching for, like, things that you're searching for the good and everything. But for me, that's improvement, because one of my big things with Prague was, like, you got to figure out how to, like, make adjustments and overcome adversity with everything they did last year. And it looks like these guys are coming to play. Again, Jacob had a couple, interceptions. Is Jacob the guy? That's going to be the question. I'm not going to sit here and, like, attack him, because I like the dude, and obviously I want to make sure he's going to do well, and he's going to have those games. But it's looking around the league and you're looking like at or the quarterback play, is Jacob going to be the guy to win a game for you when he has to? That's the biggest question for Berlin throughout the whole season. I think he knows that. I think the team knows it. They are a good team, but again, they're gonna wonder if they have their guy when they're in those big games.
This is kind of a prove it year for Jacob Sullivan after the success in the year 1 of the ELF and kind of trailing off a little bit. So this is a big prove it year for him. I do think that he's an incredibly talented quarterback. He's super poised, great person, great leader. And I'm kind of undecided right now of how they're going to end.
You kind of want to see more, right?
I need to see a little bit more. Yeah.
I think he's a bridge guy, and he can get you in the playoffs. Is he Jadrian? Is he Riley? Is he Zach? I'm going to say no.
Yeah. So,
like for me, it was Ali Khalifi. He was Rookie of the Year last year, Offensive Rookie of the Year.
that's true.
Why are they not using him? You know how many yards he has on his season so far?
What's he have?
-13.
Get this man the ball.
Like he's
Damn,
a running
that's
back with
easy.
-13 yards. 2 games in, why are they not getting him the ball? Last year he had 387, and he had a couple fumbles. He's a young guy, but I really thought, given the reliability of the pass that season, the offensive coordinator, he's a young guy, he loves the pass. I really thought Ali Khalifa would be a big part of that, and I thought it'd be getting him the ball because he's such a good hands out of the backfield. He's one of the highest rated running backs out of the backfield.
Right.
Nothing at all, and it's disappointing. I want to see more of him.
Yeah, they got to get him involved a bit more. Obviously, that's why they signed him. Their offensive coordinator, I don't know exactly how old he is. I think he's 25 years old.
Yeah, Henry
Schlegel.
I think he was 23 last year. His first time as an OC.
Yeah,
he is doing a much better job this year actually calling a game. There is an art to calling a game, so there is some improvement there. But as you said, you signed the offensive rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year last year. Like, get this guy the ball.
Get the damn ball.
Get this man the ball. So there we see the final score. Berlin win pretty handedly over a Prague team that's trying to improve, moving in the right direction. Real quick before, Matt, do you know what is Prague's offensive line? Do they have imports on their O-line right now?
Yeah, so you got Holmels. He's a Danish tackle.
Yeah.
And they got Lawrence. Lawrence, I've talked about a lot. Lawrence is a baller. Yeah. He's an all-star level player. But when you just have him, he can play literally the 1 through 5. Like anywhere you need Lawrence, he can play. And he's a phenomenal player, great athlete, great guy. But then he doesn't have any support. Go back and watch some of that tape. He's locking up everyone they put him on against most of the time. There's a few times they will get through, but it's just him. He's fighting for his life out there. He's the only one really blocking anyone.
Yep. There we go. So we see that Berlin Thunder move to 1-1. Prague Lions fall to 0-2. We've got some question marks still about the Thunder. I think we're all super curious to see what this team shows us. But moving on to a highly anticipated team, the Paris Musketeers. They had a bye week 1. We've all been just chomping on the bits to see them play football. They matched up against the Hamburg Sea Devils. A lot of people at this game. I think we had 12,000 in person at this game. This was an interesting one. Cool to see the Musketeers. Jamal, let's start with you. What do we got on this matchup?
Yeah, before we dive into this game, just a quick shout out for the league. It's for someone who's been covering the league literally since, that COVID year, it's been pretty cool to see the growth and the amount of people that are coming out to these games. And, this is another week where we're having multiple games with double-digit 1,000, people in attendance. But Paris, this is the Paris team we all expected last year. Zach, there were concerns when he lost his left tackle, Keanu Ebanks, to the Panthers, arguably the best left tackle in the league. But they replaced with Thomas Felicia, who was a homegrown, Lewis Thomas, who was a guard, EU guy. They got Toby Letterman. So they improved on the offensive line. With that being said, we're seeing a Zach that is protected. We're seeing a Zach that looks calm and composed and efficient. And when Zach's like that, he's surgical. And we saw it throughout this game. And then this guy, Austin Mitchell, I've been telling people, Austin Mitchell is going to have a crazy impact this year. But this was my reasoning for it. When you signed Kyle Sweet last year, you're signing him and expecting him to be your number 1. Austin Mitchell doesn't have to be that. You got Anthony Mahungu, who could be that X receiver and has to be respected as for an A or one of your top E's to cover. So Austin Mitchell's going to get a lot of good matchups, and obviously we saw that against the Hamburg defense this past week when he scored 4 touchdowns. But this guy is literally almost unguardable. He's quick, he's shifty, stops on the dime, catches almost everything. Makes plays down the field. This guy's a baller. I'm excited to see him. Off season how it keeps up. It was definitely exciting in his debut. But Paris looks like the team we all expect them to be last year, and they're a contender. They're definitely a contender.
Yeah. Jamal, we got to give a shout out to you, your expertise right there. Last week on our Thursday show, we were giving our hot takes out, and you weren't hosting on this one. You were just in the chat, and you said, my hot take, Austin Mitchell goes for 150 plus yards and 3 touchdowns. And he did just that and then some. So you called that, man. You've been an Austin Mitchell fan. Matt and I were talking. I think personally, I was a little bit unconvinced before this game, and now I stand corrected for sure. He showed that he is an elite talent, and that's why he's our week 2 MVP of the ELF. Matt, your thoughts on this one?
Man, Zach Edwards, he's looking like an MVP. He's looking like more than an MVP. 6 touchdowns. Like you said, Jamal, you wrapped up beautifully, so I won't spend too long on it, but surgical. Dog, like he was running into DBs and then getting up in their face about like Caleb Mills. And he's like, Caleb Mills is a 6'5" safety, by the way, and he's talking that talk to someone that big, and he was backing it up as well. Excellent game plan from Paris. They ran the ball well. Jordan Denmark, he's a running back. Like Paris walked in with zero fear of anything that Hamburg could do to them.
Yeah.
Like, there was not a hint of like, oh, well, we might not do this pass. I'm like, no, I don't care. I'm done that ball.
I think you tweeted that, didn't you, Matt, during the game? Paris has absolutely no fear right now. They're coming out just so confident.
There was not a single thing they thought Hamburg could do to them that would damage them in the slightest. And that seemed to be the case. And then on the reverse, I said last week with Hamburg, I need to see a bit more from Smith. I wasn't entirely convinced on building a scout report for him yet. I think I was right to say that because this game, not very productive, less than 50% completion, 154 yards, 0 touchdowns. The run game, Homadi was good. Homadi is a good running back. They didn't give the ball to Hardin Canedo, and I've been on Hardin Canedo for years. So I'm a big fan of him, but he's leading the league in rushing yards. I know he had that big 8-yard one.
Right.
Not one carry. Is he? I don't know if he's injured or what, but it was defensively. They tried for as long as they could. Offensively, it would just pour 475 yards total, like 7.8 yards per play for Paris.
Yeah, man, it's legit, man. And I mean, what you guys said, Zach Edwards, man, he's playing with this swagger that I feel like I saw 2 years ago when he was in Barcelona, and they were legit. Last year, I think we saw glimpses of it with his first year in Paris, but there was so much like building to do. I feel like I didn't see that confidence and swagger as much. And in this game, we saw Magic Zach, man. That was Magic Zach for sure.
Yeah. Also, heading into year 1 with Paris, like, not to say that this has to be the reason or this could weigh on somebody, but we're coming off of obviously year 2 Barcelona season where some people thought he should have been MVP. Mm-hmm. He's going to a new franchise in the Paris Musketeers. Him and Kyle Sweet, and there's been a couple other Spanish guys too. There was a lot of expectations, and we all know, the struggles new organizations have with their first year in ELF. So there was a lot riding on that. Right. But Paris did a good job at building their foundation, not steering away, and keeping the core pieces from ownership, front office, coaches, players like intact, and continue to build on it. And they brought back a lot of good homegrowns back to this year's team. And I was talking to Matt yesterday. Like, Paris literally has 3 homegrown receivers who could be a number 1 or number 2 on any other team in the ELF.
It's crazy, man. They've got incredible homegrown talent. It's absolutely insane. I also got to give a shout out to their head coach, Mark Mattioli. You see kind of his influence with how the way the team plays on the field. He's a high energy, chippy guy, young head coach, defensive guy, and you see that with the Paris team. I think that kind of trickles down from the top there. So I love to see that energy and that aggressiveness from Paris. I'm just a massive fan of what this franchise is doing, top to bottom. Solid debut last year. With what they end up 6-6 or so, 6 like that, yeah, like ended up being solid. I think they're primed to have a real big breakout year this year, guys.
Absolutely. I mean, you and Macchioli, I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit of a doppelganger. You and Macchioli, they kind of look a little bit similar.
You know, my boy Coach Mattioli. He actually, fun fact, when I played for the Italian national team, he was one of the assistant coaches on the Italian national team. So we got to interact quite a bit. And I got to say, just personally, he was a great coach. He gave me some really, really good coaching advice, like within the game. Nice little adjustment that turned right into me getting a sack on something I wouldn't have tried. And so I'm high on him and his coaching ability. So there we go. Paris Musketeers are meeting and possibly exceeding expectations so far for their first game of the season. Now, Moving on to the Fehervar Enthroners and the Cologne Centurions. This game was the subject of my hot take that we'll talk about in a little bit. But guys, I'll let you give your expertise on this one first. Matt, I think we start with you this time.
I mean, it was a hard game to watch just due to Paris being on at the same time. Like, so they get the ball and you're like, oh wait, but Paris are on. They kind of just flamed out, kept flaming out. Fumbles again are just a big issue. Turnovers, kicks. They had 3 or 4 blocked kicks, something ridiculous on either side. Like Robitaille did what he could do, but then he had that real big play at the start and then a fumble just straight afterwards. It kind of seems like they were shooting themselves in the foot. Mankel couldn't exactly get it done. He looked fine, but not, elite. There wasn't really much going on. Weddington had a bit of a burst out week. Daniel Yoloma as well, the tight end. Weed continues to look like a player that could be solid. And I was quite on the fence about Weed because he was moving up from GFL 2. So I was a bit like, it's quite a step up.
Big jump.
But he went 22 for 29, 213 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, but looked like a capable quarterback at this level. It was just 2 teams that kind of looked like at the start of the game, neither of them really wanted to win. Like they were fighting for draft picks. There aren't draft picks to be won, which was a shame. It was a slow game. Not really much happened until later. Enthroners, they don't have the homegrown talent. I think that's quite evident. We knew that last season.
Right.
And they've really experimented with this defensive line philosophy. I'm not so sure it's going to work long term. Like Dion's an excellent corner. He's 100% got to stay within the ELF. Like we all know how good he is, but he's really the only one I would say is standing out defensively. They don't really have much else going on. The defensive line experiment's not great, and the Cologne have even dabbled in a defensive line with Lytle, a defensive tackle. But it just wasn't great. Gerald Alman continues having a breakout year running back. Former rookie of the year back in the day of 2021. He looks improvement. It was a lackluster game compared to the Paris game that was on at exactly the same time.
Yeah, it's a tough time slot for this one. I mean, especially with how entertaining and flashy Paris was here.
Yeah.
Jamal, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to sit here and create some good content and disagree with Matt, but he hit it right on the head. I think, in the beginning, it looked like a game that could potentially be fireworks. Obviously, you have the big, kick return, by Connor Weddington. And then, Jack Mango hits Nathaniel Robitaille with a long pass down the field. But after that, kind of dulled out. I mean, and again, this is unofficially, I'm not reporting anything, but it looked like Connor Weddington might have maybe hurt his hamstring. That might have been an issue during training camp too. At some point during the game. So then it's like, all right, well, now Cologne's going to need a receiver, who could be the outside threat. But yeah, I mean, just in this game, the thing about when I look at, let's take Cologne, for example, and when we talk about Milan and having an identity, at least Cologne knows who they are and knows who they want to be. And that's what I mean by having an identity. We saw that week 1 versus the Fire. Granted, it was week 1. There was no film yet, but we saw the type of team that they want to be and their imprint, on, the ELF that they want to have. And I think, teams like, the Enthroners or the Pragues or Milans, or hell, even the Mercenaries, you got to figure out who you want to be and, be dominant at that, because ultimately that's what's going to make your team better versus trying to be someone you're not. Cologne, obviously, they end up winning, but definitely a harder game to watch.
Yeah. And I gotta say, this was last week we had our hot takes, and my hot take was super spicy hot. And I said that Jack Mango will be the MVP of the week. That did not happen. I also said the Fehervar Enthroners would actually beat Cologne. I was trying to get a little too cute with my picks there. I was getting a little too cute. And so that one came back to bite me a little bit. The thing is, I'm slightly intrigued by Cologne somehow. I mean, they've been a team that I've kind of written off a little bit. But they've looked a little bit better than I expected. And there's something there. There's something there for Cologne. I'd be really curious to see how they match up against the Madrid Bravos, let's say, or Hamburg. I'd be really curious to see what does that game look like? Where does Cologne really stand in kind of the middle of the pack of the ELF? And so that's kind of what I took away there. But yeah, we saw them kind of end up running away with it. And the final score here, Max, if you want to put that up for us, ends up at 35-10. Now,
yeah,
go ahead, Jamal. Go ahead, Jamal.
We got a couple seconds to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Who's the worst team in the West right now?
Damn.
That's so hard, man.
And this is not to like downgrade a team or anything. It just speaks to
how good that conference,
how good the West is right now.
And that's what I was thinking, because I think there was a couple of question marks. Like before the season started, I'd be like, okay, Cologne's not going to be good. Madrid, how good are they really going to be? Hamburg, but I think that I would probably. Damn, this is hard.
I know. I think I know where you're going. Let me say this. I wouldn't be surprised if Cologne could steal one versus a Frankfurt, or steal one versus or even make it close versus Paris, just because of
there's something
identity,
there.
just because of their identity, but also it's going to depend if they have a true number one that's healthy or not.
Right.
But
if he's okay.
Yeah.
We could be sitting here saying like Hamburg, Cologne.
That's what I'm thinking. Right now, I feel like I would say Hamburg. Hamburg at the bottom of that. I don't know. Sorry, Maxie. Yeah, that's an interesting conversation. The Western Conference there. I mean, it's pretty damn stacked this year. Yeah. And speaking of, we're moving to elite game in the Western Conference. Reigning champion Rhein Fire and the Frankfurt Galaxy with their new quarterback, Luke Sorotka. A lot of people were curious to see how Frankfurt would look this year. I think that we're with you first, Jamal, this time. Man. This was a crazy one.
Frankfurt definitely looks green. They look like the Frankfurt Galaxy this roster is built to beat the Rhein Fire. Will they do it? I don't know. They definitely gave us a game yesterday.
Right.
Luke Zaraka a New York kid, a New York Italian kid with the Philly special.
Love it.
Glenn Tugger. I mean, you want to talk about a running back that has great feet, great vision, runs with power behind his pads. Like Glenn's that guy. Like, and I'm not. That's no surprise to anyone. But just how he moves and how he's always going forward, like he's just hard to stop. Maybe this is a hot take, maybe not. I don't think Frankfurt doesn't look as dominant to me as they did in the past.
So you mean Ryan? You mean Ryan?
Excuse me. Ryan doesn't look as dominant to me as they did in the past, and maybe they're still trying to fill out who they are. I know Matt loves the Fire over here, but just looking at like obviously their first two games, maybe it was a trap game or not. Maybe Frankfurt's just closer than I think they are, but when you look at the Fire and who they've been in the past, like granted we're only 2 weeks in, so obviously it's still a long season, but I think a team could catch them this year. I think it's possible.
Ooh, Matt. Yeah. What is your response to that, Matt?
I got a lot to say, but limited time to say it.
Speak your mind.
Speak your mind, Matt.
All right. I'm going to be real. Scoreline was generous. It was not that close. It was not that close. I said before the game, 12-point favorites. It was an 11-point game. I know that me and JJ are in a call. I was screaming at my TV, like, just go for one more. I need to be right. So Glenn's outstanding. I said before the game as well, 150 yards. He got 141, so a little bit shy off. But I've met Glenn, and he's a fellow Brit, so I've met him a couple times in person. The ankle bend he has is phenomenal. Just to go off of what you said with his movement, how he can lower his center of gravity. The receivers they have McKnight. I was again like with Austin Mitchell. I was skeptical. I wasn't 100% sure how he would fit into the scheme. He looks good. Harlan Kofi's back. That massive play down the middle that basically tied up the game for him. Brian Winter, who I've been vocal about all offseason as a person who studied the NFL Academy within such depth. Like, they have weapons. It's just people aren't entirely – they haven't seen much of them. Like, people like Brian. Brian's outstanding. Like, I think that he's a 4. He could have been a D1 guy. Like, he has D1 offers. He's just chosen to play in Ryan Fire this year. Defensively, Flamore Zimon, Kenzie, Anderson, Nash. Like, they nearly had a pick in the opening drive. It just came out of the hands. Frankfurt, are a very good football team. Frankfurt are not going to beat Paris. Paris are the challenge to the fire, not the Galaxy. I've been saying this all off season. I was kind of waiting. I don't mean to be harsh to Zaradka. I think he's a good quarterback, but I was waiting for the pick. We saw last season with a lot of interceptions. It came down to the Milan. It was a lot of deep balls. Flores Calderon's down there somewhere. I kept saying. This time it was Castle, and Castle is unreal, 120 yards. So he's an excellent player. But I was waiting. I was like, it's gonna happen. The pick's coming. Lo and behold, the pick came.
That pick in the middle of the field definitely wasn't the best time. Definitely wasn't the best timing.
Yeah,
no, for sure. I mean,
but that's the makeup of the Rhein Fire secondary. You got tall, you got Anderson, Nash, Omari, Williams, who's the best safety in the league. You got those long, lanky corners. So they can make up if a receiver has a step or two on them because they got the size and the length. And you saw that when Luke tried to drop it in over the middle there, and Tony Anderson got the best of them.
And the box is just too small for the Galaxy. They do not have the defensive line and linebackers to deal with the offensive line of Rhein Fire. Jasper Friss, incredible. Sven Bittenbach, one of the best offensive tackles. Pepler, severely underrated offensive lineman. They just have all these guys. Patrick Posch, fullback, the best in the position. He can block like a madman. They even had a punter go for like a 12-yard run. They're so diverse offensively, and the box of Frankfurt isn't able to deal with that. We saw how good Paris is. I wanted to touch on Poli Sacramento, another offensive lineman for Paris who's outstanding. I do not think Frankfurt are going to be able to deal with Paris. I think the scoreline was a little bit generous. I'm going to get a lot of hate for the fans of the franchise because they're a very vocal franchise, to say the least. They built around the DBs. We know that. They've got the two longer guys with Divine Buckram and with Jamal Liggins, and the two very elite corners. But when you sacrifice the inside, they don't have the best German talent within the country. And with the amount of German talent that's in the country, it's very spread out between, the Serge and the Fire. I think Frankfurt kind of got short end of the stick in that regard.
Right. And I mean, just a comment on the game and production as a whole. This was an awesome showing for the European League of Football. This was Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, kind of the cap of the weekend. Two great teams. I think we had 14,000 people there. We see the packed stadium. Well, guys, so Frankfurt said, in the offseason, we talked to Coach Kozling and we saw the big moves that they made. And basically they were building to be able to finally beat the Rhein Fire. Matt, you sound like you don't think that they moved in the right direction with that, or did they, and just not enough?
I don't think they've got it. I mean, I'm kind of wearing my heart on my sleeve with these predictions. I know some people don't like. I'm not a fence sitter. I'm going to give my opinion. I got to back it up. But I just don't think they've got enough. You look at every positional group. Paris is better. Quarterback, I'm giving Paris. Running back room, maybe Frankfurt. Offensive line, Paris. Receivers, Paris. They built to beat Rhein, and they forgot about their rivals in the French capital.
It's a good point.
They didn't even beat Rhein. You built the whole offseason. We're going to beat Rhein, and then they didn't. You know what I mean?
Jamal, what do you think?
No, listen. I don't. It's not that I don't disagree with Matt. I think Paris is probably closer to Rhein than Frankfurt is. But at the same time, when you're comparing this Frankfurt team compared to the last, Frankfurt teams going up against, Rhein, this Frankfurt team is better than those in the past, and this Frankfurt team would be the closest team to being Fire. And granted, the score was 11 points. It was a 1 point game at one point.
It was,
right.
So
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It did feel for me. It felt like they were closer than they had been in the past, and I know it kind of ended up with a bigger split here with 11 points win at the end, but it was close for a while there. And there was kind of a point where I thought, okay, Frankfurt's actually about to take the lead here, and it just swayed back the other way. I'm not sure, man. I don't know if I had to make a bet. I feel like Frankfurt does have a shot later in the year to get close to beating Rhein. Do they actually? I don't know. It's it's kind of too tough to say. And I don't know, just what you said, Matt, kind of the talent there and the talent differences is just, maybe it's not enough to make it up, but it's interesting there. And we've got that rivalry. Rhein Fire comes out again on top. There we see it, guys. That's our slate of the games for week 2 of the ELF. Hey, real quick before we head out, just give me your what was your guys' favorite game of the week?
I'll let you go on that.
I'll start. For me, the pretty girl at the dance was the Serge Panthers game to start the weekend. That game was just a tale of two different halves, and sometimes those are the best games to watch. So for me, that game had a little bit of everything that I was looking for. Serge obviously pulled it through, but in a loss, Panthers still won because we saw the capabilities of them competing at what we consider maybe a tier 1 team.
Matt, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I would have agreed, but I'm going to be a bit different and go the other way because you've taken my thunder. So I'm going to go with Rhein Fire and Galaxy. I think it was a high-level football game. We kind of saw the distance that the Fire had between the pack. And I think for me, it was quite revealing. You yourself, you're not entirely convinced by the Rhein Fire. I still am. I think they got one of the best defensive units, one of the best offensive units. Frankfurt uniforms are something. I don't know. I'm like on the fence. I'm not sure if I like them or hate them. It's like Marmite. I'm not so sure. But I think it was a very revealing game for me personally, as someone who is looking at the individuals rather than the scheme. I'm looking at how they built the roster, and I think that Fire just a better built team.
Yeah, and I see a couple of you guys here in the chat. Marcus, your favorite game of the week was being right about the Centurions over Silas and the rest of the live crew. You got us on that. Marcus. Too bad Silas is not here to defend himself on Thursday. You guys can argue about that. Here we see, finally, before we go, just the standings of each of these conferences. Look at these, man. That Western Conference is crazy. Look at those teams in there. If you guys had to write, what's that?
Look who's in last in the West.
Frankfurt's in last. That's
insane.
Like just looking at the West, it's gonna be tough to get out. It's gonna be tough for whoever that second team is to get out. We know obviously they automatically get one in one of the top 3 seeds, but for a second team to get in, it's gonna be tough. But we'll see what happens.
Hey guys, this is an exciting one. Great week 2 in the ELF, man. We're just getting started for the 2024 season. Already some great games. We got so many stars in this league, man, and just so many storylines. I can't wait to see how things develop. Everyone in the chat, thank you guys for joining us. Matt, Jamal, absolutely love your guys' expertise, man. You guys just absolutely bring it. We're lucky to have you here. Thanks for joining us on the show today, fellas.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Pleasure to be here as always.
All right, guys.
Until next time. See you later, chat.
See y'all next time. Bye.